Here we go. Special Education Individual Plan. This is a scanned document, and we're going to find out just what special education is. Special education is an individual education program. It's just designed to help children reach their highest potential. It provided through children through birth, understand what I just said, birth to 21, who qualify according to the laws and regulations outlined by each state and the federal government. Children who receive special education instruction services according to their specific needs. Children are placed in special education programs only after resources in the general education program have been considered and utilized when appropriate. The following are the eligibility categories for special education. Autism, deafness, deaf and blind, emotional disturbed, established medical disability, hard of hearing, mental retardation, multiple disability, orthopedic impairment, or other health impairment, specific learning disability, speech and language impairment, traumatic brain injury, or visual impairment. Did anyone miss a diagnosis of ADHD? You see it's not there? Because that's not a disability. It's just something created when people don't want to take the time to ensure that access happens for you. So, let's move on, shall we? Low incidence funds are also granted to the SALPA based on the number of students in the following categories: deaf, blind, hard of hearing, visually impaired, severe orthopedic impairment. Students in these categories can access these funds for special equipment and materials. Next page. A comprehensive. The IEP covers all deficit areas, including communication, behavior, socialization, self-help, academics, perceptual motor, gross motor skills, vocational skills, and transition services, related services. The needed accommodations in both general and regular and vocational and special education. Specific, the IEP goals and objectives are, started in measurable and observable behaviors. Sequential, the IEP is based on developmental or functional sequences in skills. Realistic, the age appropriate, the IEP goals and objectives should fit the student's current level of functioning and probable growth rate. Understandable, the IEP is written in a language that is comprehensible to both parents and professionals, and it communicates. Mutually developed, the IEP represents a consensus among parents, the student, and the school personnel. An individual education program describes the special education and related services specifically designed to meet the unique needs of the student with a disability. The program is developed at one or more IEP meetings, and its provisions are detailed in writing in the IEP. The IEP is developed by a team that includes the last school administrator, or at least a school administrator, the teacher, the regular education teacher, special education staff, whom performed any assessments the parents, and the students when appropriate. It contains goals and objectives that are based on the students' present levels and educational performance. These goals and objectives are outlined by those involved in planning and providing services. In addition, IEP specifics are in educational placement and settings and the related services necessary to reach these goals and objectives. It also includes a date the services will begin and how long they will last, and the way in which the student's progress will be evaluated. That's saying a whole lot. That is saying that we are agreeing as a team to determine how we're going to measure the progress of the student with the parents' involvement and the staff and the IEP people. All right, so the IEP is a blueprint measured in quality assurance that services for the students in special ed program assist with the student in making progress based on their plan. It is an opportunity for parents and educators to work together and equal participants identify the students' needs that will be provided to meet those needs and anticipated outcomes and what they may be. It is a document that is revised as needed and has periodic review. The IEP serves as an evaluation of the student's progress towards meeting the educational goals and objectives. Finally, the IEP serves as a focal point for clarifying issues and corruptive decision making by the parents and the students and school personnel in the best interest of the student. For all of these reasons, the IEP is a cornerstone in special education. So that's saying a whole lot. And then it starts talking about the basics special education process under IDEA. Step 1, the child is identified for possibly needing special education related services, and a referral for the request for an evaluation happens. And the child is evaluated, eligibility is decided, and the child is found eligible for services. Once the student has been found eligible for certain services, the IEP must be written in 2 steps and summarized below. The IEP team in this guide will look at 2 steps in a much greater detail. And so here we go. They schedule the meeting and they notify the parents. And then they have the meeting after they decide where it's going to be. And then here's this other step here. The meeting is held and the IEP is written. And the team gathers to talk about, the appropriate support and the appropriate placement for the student. This is critical. I think that we don't understand that we need to hold accountable local agencies who just give children letter grades of F and expect that that's so acceptable. Failure is not an option. We have to be responsible as a society to ensure that access truly happens. We have 8-year-old children who are taking their lives because they're bullied. What is bullying if we're not teaching our children the importance of respect and respecting one another? This is America, and we're all different. We are all uniquely different and blessed by God to continue to live in our skins here in the world, amongst the universe, where we have the ability to change and be a better nation. But in being a better nation, we surely have to ensure that access happens for all children. Bullying is unacceptable. And there are services that can be implemented to ensure that bullying stop and that children learn to respect one another. But that all has to happen. And, and there are adults that are involved in either turning their backs away from it or not acknowledging it or being complicit in it. And, there has to be an accountability for the systems. Ultimately, the system must function. But if you have a whole bunch of public services, and then you have twice as much dysfunction on the street, and then you have this just a level of entitlement for people who are being the service provider simply because they were lucky enough to finish school, lucky enough to get that degree that documented that they could work in a program, but perhaps they can't think beyond the program. They can't think how to ensure that the maintenance of effort in the program and those services are sustainable, and that you're actually benefiting the community by operating the program, and that you're not bringing a greater harm to society simply by ignoring the needs of children in public services. See, there's a great responsibility for oversight. When you are working with the community, you have to ensure that the benefit is for the community, and it's not just a one-sided uh, system in which people are really not benefiting, yet and still people are still getting paid to maintain what? Dysfunction? That's kind of crazy to me. So anyways, back on this IEP, you have to understand that, even if the parents don't agree to put a child in a certain placement, the other team members have to still try to come to some agreement. And then if they still can't work it out, then they have a right to have a due process hearing. And, those hearings do happen. I was a parent who helped another parent go through due process, so I know what that's like. But here in state of Nevada, I don't even know if they have mediation. Truly, I don't see how they could have mediation when they have all those children up there in juvenile. And that's simply because these kids drop out, or these children are not in full day education programs in the first place. So Nevada does some unique things here that has to do with putting children on tracks that will never reach full graduation status because of the inability to access the number of hours, or however they've got this different levels of high school diplomas or certificates of completion. And it's kind of insanity because, it's given an out to the intent behind the public services. They're not measuring the maintenance of effort. They're just documenting what's happening, what's occurred. And over time, poverty begets poverty. You can't have someone in the community continuing to have children who have no responsibility for those children because they don't even understand what responsibility is. And there's been no process in which to share that concept because simply we are dealing with generational poverty. Generational, meaning that when I was in high school or when I was in middle schools, there were women out there that were having children. I don't have a grandchild yet. It's gray hair, but I had my last one at 38, and I'm 61, and he's 22. So I'm still working on trying to ensure that the foundation happened for my sons. And in creating a foundation, I need to make sure that there's foundation out there for other people who I know who are having grandchildren. And the system is broken. So I think that, it's such an important election. People have to understand the importance of voting, just as they have to understand the importance of engagement and being involved in the process of oversight, and what that actually looks like, what local control actually looks like. Because just because you don't happen to get on a committee, know that you should be going to attend those committee meetings to ensure that you understand the decisions that are being made around you. It's real that they voted to criminalize people who live on the streets of Nevada simply because there are no resources for those families to transition from poverty. There's no process established in which, once a person becomes homeless, they're just out there. And people become homeless for so many different circumstances, death in the family. And the family may have always owned, but then, with the death in the family and the property not transitioning in the manner in which you thought it would, because those circumstances just weren't thought about prior to. There's a lot to thinking about public education and understanding that even when you have children who have been identified as needing additional support, that those children have the same rights as a non-disabled child to meet those same goals and have those goals measured and monitored and increase more access. But access only happens when we have an intent behind the intent, the specific intent behind education, which is to, after 12 years of support, then one is able to be independent and productive to society and not costing society a great deal. Anyways, this is the end of this slide presentation. But know that I'm going to come back and do the assessments and evaluations. I'm going to take a break here and upload this to my YouTube channel. Okay, so make sure you subscribe and share and say I like it if you like the video. And I'm going to keep on sharing information to make sure that, that we're doing the best that we can as, as a generation to support the younger generation, ensuring that public education stays public.